Welcome back to Two Hearts, where stories are weaved to explore the beauty of diverse cultures and the depths of human connection. When the person you believe you knew most intimately is revealed to be an imposter, what is your next course of action? Do you sever ties and try to heal from shame and embarrassment, or do you work to reconcile? And once all truths come to light, will love and security ultimately be found in the familiar or the unknown? Please enjoy Shattered Promises. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so that more members of our community can continue to find content like this.
As evening gradually crested on a typical Tuesday, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a pale tint of tangerine and cantaloupe hues over the skyline of the city. Vanessa Pierce, a woman of poise and practiced perfection, stood in her kitchen, the aroma of a perfectly roasted chicken wafting through the air. Her hands, one adorned with a simple but elegant diamond and wedding band, deftly arranged the dishes on the table. The clinking of cutlery against dinnerware was a symphony of domesticity, a testament to her unwavering dedication to her family and her home. Justin, her husband of 5 years, was a man of ambition and charm. A successful junior partner at his law firm, he was the envy of his peers and the pride of his family. Together, they were the epitome of a power couple, their lives intertwined in a dance of professional achievement and marital bliss. Both accomplished in their respective fields, as an attorney and marketing executive, their lives seemed to be a perfectly choreographed dance of ambition and harmony. Vanessa, with her elegant poise and meticulous attention to detail, was not only a powerhouse in her career, but also the guardian of their immaculate household. Her days were a balance of board meetings and dusting, of client pitches and homemade dinners. Their marriage, like their lives, was a testament to a perceived perfection. Vanessa's day had been a whirlwind of meetings and deadlines, but she never let her professional life interfere with her domestic undertakings. As she set the table, her mind wandered to the early days of their relationship. The memories were bittersweet, a reminder of the love that was once all-consuming and their only priority. Before Vanessa could reminisce too deeply, the front door swung open, and Justin walked in, his tie loosened and his jacket slung over his shoulder. "Hey, babe," he called out, his voice filled with a warmth that melted her heart. "It smells amazing in here." Vanessa turned to him, a practiced smile embossed on her lips. "Dinner's almost ready. I hope you're hungry." Justin leaned in to kiss her lips, his cologne a familiar scent in her nostrils. "Starving. You know how to take care of your man, Van." As they sat down to eat, the conversation flowed with an ease born of years of practice and genuine interest. They discussed work, friends, and future plans, each word an invitation into the hecticness that was their daily life. Little did Vanessa know, her world was about to crumble, piece by piece, until all that remained were the shattered remnants of a love once thought indestructible. While normal people spent their weekends shopping, hiking, or exploring new brunch spots, Vanessa achieved her end-of-week catharsis by cleaning. They made more than enough money to hire one of the many well-recommended agency cleaners that their friends swore by. But Vanessa and her sister had been raised by a mother that prided herself on being the lady of the house and overseeing all things that happened in one's home. One Saturday, while Justin was away on business, Vanessa woke up excitedly, thrilled that she'd be able to try her new electric steam mop without worrying about her husband tracking dirt on her freshly cleaned floors. She'd spent hours tidying up her home from top to bottom until every shared surface was spotless and every floor shimmered. Although out of sight and far from view, her last task of the day had been a quick dusting and spot cleaning of Justin's study. With sanitizing wipes and her Swiffer in hand, Vanessa made quick work of cleaning the cluttered, manly space. She had just wiped down the monitor on his desk when she noticed that he'd left his computer on. As she raised her fingers to power it down, she observed an active message thread minimized on screen. Curiosity piqued. She approached the screen, her heart pounding as she realized the sheer volume of the exchanges as evidenced by the red number over the message icon. With a trembling hand, she clicked the icon to reveal what she'd briefly considered but hadn't truly expected: Justin's audaciously flirty banter with someone who wasn't her. But it had been more than that. The promises and requests between the two were clear evidence that her husband had been having an affair with another woman, a woman she knew. The messages were explicit, detailing their most recent rendezvous just this past week and plans for the future. Vanessa felt the ground shift beneath her feet as she closed the application, powered down the device, and left the study. Like clockwork, when Justin crossed the threshold of their home's front door on Sunday evening, Vanessa had been waiting in the dining room. The place settings perfect, the meal still hot. Customary greetings and a quick freshening up out of the way, Justin joined his wife at the table. Not noticing her disquiet, he droned on about the conference he had attended and the unwarranted labor law changes underway as a result of the new administration. Unable to smile in the face of his duplicity any longer, Vanessa dotted her lips with the linen napkin in her lap before interrupting her husband's tirade. "Justin, I need to talk to you," Vanessa said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Justin frowned in confusion. "What's the matter?" "You tell me," she challenged, pulling a printed transcript from beneath the table and handing it to him. It had taken a few moments, but once he realized what exactly he was looking at, Justin's eyes widened in shock. "Vanessa, it's not what it looks like," he insisted. "It looks like you've been having an affair. For months, in fact," she retorted, her voice trembling with anger and hurt. "I can't believe that instead of coming to me with your concerns, you waited until I was out of town to snoop around on my computer and rifled through my private study. Vanessa, you had no right." The panicked husband was now gone, and the attorney immediately took over. Vanessa didn't dignify the twisted accusation with a response. Instead, she addressed the facts in a calm, almost detached tone. "I didn't snoop, Justin. You left your computer on. And now, I'm leaving you." Justin's desperation was palpable. As she pushed away from the table, he also stood and pleaded, his eyes welling with tears. "Vanessa, please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Vanessa looked at him, her heart aching. "Were you with her on your trip?" she asked, already knowing the answer. Looking away, Justin couldn't meet her gaze. The silence was deafening as she left the room. The next few weeks had been torturous for Vanessa as she spent time packing her belongings, untangling her personal assets from Justin's, and grieving the loss of her marriage. Having booked the first deals she found on her travel app, Vanessa left town abruptly, ignoring the barrage of calls and texts from her husband. Eventually, settling into the quiet and loneliness at a peaceful, off-the-grid wellness resort, she called her older sister Kedra to inform her of the devastating news. "What can I do?" the woman asked with a stunned and indignant tone in her voice. "I'm fine, Kedra," Vanessa lied. Ever the protector, Kedra had immediately offered Vanessa a place to stay. "You know, until you decide how much you want to take Justin for in the divorce," she surmised. The thought made her laugh, despite the pain that refused to relinquish its hold on her heart. "I'll be fine, eventually. I just need time," Vanessa reasoned, her voice shallow. As much as she truly needed the closeness and support of her sister, she refused to inconvenience Kedra, her husband, and their young family just because her own husband couldn't honor his vows. Fine, so long as you promise to stay in contact with me every day, no matter what, Kidra insisted. I will, she swore sincerely. Satisfying the daily check-ins with her big sister had been a lot easier than her attempts to mentally and emotionally log off at the resort. Despite its beauty and world-class accommodations, Vanessa had barely left her room. It had taken the dedicated housekeeping steward's insistence that her room could not go uncleaned for another day for Vanessa to reluctantly relent. Leaving her room with sun hat and Kindle in hand, Vanessa made a beeline to the farthest loungers nestled around one of the property's most remote pools. She'd been reading for hours and nursing a complimentary concoction offered by one of the outdoor waitstaff when she sensed a presence to her left. Is it all right if I sit here? A deep voice inquired of her. Although there was an array of other seats the stranger could have chosen, Vanessa noticed that only her chair and the one next to it was shaded from the beaming sun overhead. Help yourself, she grudgingly obliged. Nearly an hour of comfortable silence had passed between the pair before Vanessa observed movement from her lounge chair neighbor. Removing his shirt and sunglasses, the man stood and made his way into the motionless water of the infinity pool. Despite not acknowledging the man other than to affirm his choice of seating, she casually glanced over the top of her sunglasses as he sliced effortlessly through the water. With tan skin and a muscular physique, swimming or another outdoor fitness regimen appeared to have been naturally commonplace for him. She'd let her Kindle drop onto her lap as she watched the man's dark cap of curls flatten to a scalp and forehead every time he submerged beneath the rippling depths. She'd been so invested in his every movement that she'd briefly forgotten where she was and why she was there. The man had completed his final lap and reached the end of the pool nearest to her before gingerly raising himself up onto the pool's ledge. Vanessa watched as he pushed his hair from his face before turning to look directly at her. Embarrassed at having been caught staring, she quickly glanced away. Occupying her hands by casually reaching for her Kindle, she attempted to pick up reading from where she'd left off, but the words on the screen were now a jumble of incomprehensible nonsense. Against her better judgment, Vanessa hazarded another glance at the intriguing stranger, only to find him still looking over at her. The moment between them felt charged, yet this time, neither of them looked away. Eventually climbing out of the pool, the man slowly strolled back over to his lounger. Vanessa watched as droplets of water cascaded down, traversing across his upper body and along his rippled abdomen. Hello. The man smiled knowingly as he returned to the lounger and began toweling off. Hello, Vanessa parroted, still slightly off-kilter from just moments before. I'm Antonio, the man stated, offering his hand. Vanessa. Her voice came out softer than she'd intended as she completed the handshake. I hope that you find solace for whatever is afflicting your heart, Vanessa, Antonio stated, his expressive brown eyes staring directly into her equally dark ones. I beg your pardon? Vanessa asked as she pulled her hand from his gentle grip. Please forgive my forwardness. It's just that, in the time that I've been out here sharing space with you, I couldn't help but notice the palpable feelings of grief emanating from you. The man's perceptiveness notwithstanding, Vanessa wasn't in the headspace to deny or debate her emotional disposition with a stranger. Instead, she simply shrugged and brushed off the observation. Why do you care? She asked. I care, he stated as he pulled his shirt back over his head and sat down on the lounger, because human decency requires that I should want someone in distress to be okay. Vanessa gasped quietly, her heart stuttering and caught off guard by the man's startling empathy and kindness. You want to talk about it? He asked, turning in his seat to face her. No, she did not want to talk about the picture-perfect life as she knew it, falling apart in 4K. But as he offered her a hopeful smile, Vanessa nodded imperceptibly. 6 days ago, I discovered my husband's long-standing affair. What made the revelation all the more devastating was the fact that he was with his affair partner during the business trip he returned home to me from. She explained. The immediate grip of Antonio's large hand onto her smaller one broke the dam. With tears streaming down her face, Vanessa expelled the very sordid details around her crumbling marriage. From that moment, they spent their days talking and getting to know one another. Antonio had admitted to having noticed her the week before, when he'd first arrived, and had hoped for a more pleasant opportunity to have made her acquaintance. Although unintentional, the admission made Vanessa laugh. Over lunch, she told him about her marketing background, while he'd explained that he now enjoyed life as a self-made entrepreneur. I left the 9-to-5 rigor of the private information technology sector nearly a decade ago. Now my favorite part about my current lifestyle is the time I spend in places like Thailand, Namibia, Finland, and Qatar for work. He smiled. And how do you get to travel so much, if you don't mind my asking? Vanessa inquired as she drizzled balsamic dressing over her grilled chicken salad. My gifts make room for me, he noted simply as he raised his glass and she followed suit, completing the toast. Proverbs 18:16 is one of my favorite scriptures, she pointed out with raised eyebrows and a disarming smile. Mine as well, he admitted. And I took those words to heart as I began my journey in cybersecurity consultancy. Not only does this work take me across the globe, but I've been able to build a life that allows me to work and play as I decide. My husband and we said we'd travel extensively after we became a little more established in our careers, and just before we planned to have children, Vanessa said. And what is your timeline for children? Antonio asked delicately. We just started trying a month ago, but now, I don't know. Antonio's napkin was dotting at the tears falling from Vanessa's eyes before she even realized she started crying again. Whether over dinner, during daily scenic walks on the property, or as the pair stargazed in the evenings, Antonio's message to Vanessa remained a consistent one. He told her what a fascinating woman she was, and he encouraged her not to wait to live. What does that mean exactly? Vanessa asked as they walked together along the dimly lit pathway. They weren't touching, but their connection was companionable. That's a question only you can answer, Vanessa, he pointed out. Antonio had just escorted Vanessa back to her villa when her phone rang. Not recognizing the phone number, Vanessa asked Antonio for a moment as she stepped away to answer it. In a matter of moments, Vanessa's disposition morphed from one of contentment to one of sheer panic. The call had been from Mercy Regional Medical Center, the nurse indicating that Vanessa was listed as next of kin. When Vanessa faltered and asked for whom, she was told that Justin had been in a car accident and was currently being admitted. Watching her intently, Antonio waited for Vanessa to finish the call and turned to him. Is everything okay? He asked. Justin, my husband, an accident. He is in the hospital, Vanessa explained frantically. Seeing her coming undone, Antonio kissed her delicately on the lips. Although it was a tender and suggestive kiss that promised more, he'd done it solely in an attempt to settle and center her. Once Vanessa calmed, he opened his arms and she stepped into the proffered embrace. Go, Vanessa. Go do what needs to be done, he insisted as she stepped reluctantly from his hold moments later. Standing at the doorway to her villa, Antonio slipped his card into her palm. She thanked him for everything, and he adorned her forehead with another kiss before leaving. Although Vanessa was reeling from the news, she stepped inside and leaned against the door in an effort to calm herself. Taking that moment to clear her mind, she mentally processed everything she needed to do. Dialing the familiar number, Her first call was to Kidra, who took it upon herself to coordinate her sister's ground transportation once she arrived back home. The next call was to Justin's mother, who was understandably distraught and had more questions than Vanessa had answers. Once she assured the woman that she would keep her posted of her son's status, Vanessa scrambled around the villa as she hastily grabbed her things and tossed them into her suitcases. Seated on the hastily booked return flight had given Vanessa the opportunity to reflect on everything that had transpired. She recounted the medical professional's sober words over the phone. Mr. Pierce is alive but unresponsive. The accident appears to have triggered a rare neurological episode. When Vanessa finally touched down, the car service driver her sister had hired was waiting for her near the arrivals gate. Understanding his assignment, the driver avoided small talk, navigated the freeway efficiently, and reached their destination in record time. At the hospital, she ran frantically to the nurse's station. "Vanessa!" A relieved whimper sounded from behind her. Turning, she recognized Justin's colleague Heather, who sprang from the seat she was sitting in and rushed over to Vanessa with tears streaming down her face. "What are you doing here?" Vanessa asked, both startled and then offended by the woman's audacious approach. Justin and we'd been at a client dinner and were on the way back to the offices. We were T-boned at an intersection." Heather stammered the explanation. "You were in the car? With Justin?" Vanessa clarified. Looking disheveled but unharmed, the woman nodded a bit self-consciously. "He was driving and I was in the passenger seat. I've been here for hours, Vanessa, but the doctors won't tell me." "Get out." Vanessa interrupted her in a low but dignified tone. When Heather only blinked in confusion, Vanessa continued quietly. "I know." The look on Heather's face was one of horrified shock before she quickly wiped her eyes and schooled her features. But instead of behaving as the situation dictated and in the way that Vanessa had requested, Heather turned to Vanessa with a pitying look on her face. "It was never Justin's nor my intention to hurt you." Heather had attempted to soften the blow, but before she could get the words out completely, Vanessa administered a vicious slap to the woman's face. "Oh my gosh, what is wrong with you? Are you crazy? I'm going to press charges. I'm going to sue." Heather's disbelief and top-tier hysterics were on full display. "Please do." Vanessa invited the threat calmly. "Not only is my attorney on retainer a better lawyer than you, but residing in an alienation of affection state will make my countersuit all the more enjoyable," she finished casually. Just as the commotion between the women gained the attention of the medical professionals and security personnel on the floor, Justin's neurologist entered the waiting area. "Mrs. Pierce?" she asked, looking between both women. "Yes." Vanessa identified herself with intention. "I'm Dr. Nguyen. Will you please come with me?" Leaving Heather with an audience to judge the imminent consequences of her shameful actions, Vanessa allowed the doctor to escort her to Justin's room. Inside, the space was sterile, quiet, and ominous. As Justin lay motionless on the hospital bed, Dr. Nguyen described his injuries to the stoic-looking woman. Although the physician had already apprised Vanessa of her husband's uniquely rare case of retrograde amnesia due to the accident, the medical professional was still optimistic that his full memory would eventually return. In the meantime, she insisted that, as a part of his recovery, Vanessa remain a consistent presence by his side, helping him to find normalcy and balance until those memories returned. Gut-punched by the medical requirements and turn of events, Vanessa just stood there, demoralized and defeated. She'd been a good wife, a compatible partner, a lover, and a giver. Yet being cheated on hadn't been unwarranted punishment enough. Now, to increase the chances of her husband's recovery, she had to figure out how to mask her own hurt and betrayal to satisfy the painful and heartbreaking duty of pretending all was well between them. Vanessa sat by Justin's bedside, her hand gently holding his. Outside, the world continued to spin, but in this moment, time stood still. She watched him sleep, his face peaceful, unaware of the storm that raged within her. Her heart ached with a mix of love and devastation, a bitter cocktail that left her feeling both numb and raw. Pretty quickly, Vanessa's life became a balancing act. She continued to work, managing her career while also caring for Justin. Every day, she would visit him at the hospital, pretending that everything was fine, even as her spirit withered from his disloyalty. Justin, unaware of their marital issues, relied on her for support and comfort. Vanessa, however, struggled to maintain her composure, often breaking down in private. The duality of her existence, playing the role of a devoted wife while nursing her own wounds, was exhausting. She found herself questioning her decision to stay, wondering if she was doing the right thing. Despite her doubts, Vanessa pressed on, driven by a sense of duty and the genuine hope that Justin would recover. As days turned to passing weeks, Justin struggled to comprehend his situation. With consciousness came confusion, examinations, frustration, and resignation. Having no understanding of how he'd ended up in the hospital except what he'd been told, he was understandably afraid to learn of his prognosis and the uncertainty concerning how long it would last. He, of course, found solace and comfort in his wife's presence, so she'd had to compartmentalize her unresolved emotions for his sake. Even in enduring the complications of the major health crisis, it was not lost on Vanessa how ill-equipped she was to navigate such a complex situation alone. Weighing her marital responsibilities and the knowledge of her husband's unfaithfulness, she toiled every day with the decision of whether reconciliation was possible, or if she believed there would one day be someone wonderful in the world who believed her to be enough, loved, respected, and cherished her for who she was, and would allow her to let her proverbial hair down. Overwhelmed with the level of care her husband required, her daily performances for his sake, and her complete loss of self, Vanessa finally succumbed to the small but insistent voice that reminded her that she wasn't alone. Sitting hopelessly and ironically at her husband's desk late one evening, she delicately fingered the card she'd held onto like a lifeline for over a month in one hand, and gripped her ringing cell phone in the other. "May I speak to Antonio Cole?" she blurted before she lost her nerve and hung up. "Vanessa?" he inquired. How did you know it was me?" she asked, surprised. "I'm afraid you'll think I'm feeding you a line if I tell you," he said with an embarrassed chuckle. "Try me," she offered, glad that he seemed receptive to hearing from her after the amount of time that had passed. "I felt a warmth in my chest when I heard your voice," he offered. "Oh," Vanessa said, startled by his frankness. "I told you," he laughed softly. "No, that was beautiful. That was the truth," he offered quietly. Vanessa didn't know what to say to the man's poetic words, so she steered back to safer waters. He let her talk about a host of different things, never once pressing her about what was going on with her husband or what she decided to do about her marriage. Eventually, however, Vanessa's conversation about bucket list travel destinations morphed into the complete, ugly explanation about her current situation. When Antonio didn't say anything after her 20-minute rant, Vanessa panicked. "Are you still there?" she asked quietly. "I am. Do you think I am crazy?" "When will your husband be discharged from the hospital?" Antonio asked thoughtfully instead of answering her question. "At the end of the week. I'll be spending the foreseeable future on a leave of absence from work, as his doctor has determined my presence is an integral component of his at-home treatment," she explained tiredly. "I think Justin is fortunate to have you, Vanessa, and I hope both of you get to experience the best versions of yourselves during this time," he said, his voice filled with genuine care. "Who are you?" Vanessa asked, floored by the selfless response, and Antonio laughed. "When someone has strong feelings for another person, they should always want the best for that person," Antonio said softly. "You have strong feelings for me?" Vanessa whispered. "Yes, Vanessa, but despite that, my strongest desire is for you to be okay, for things to work out in your favor," he affirmed. "You are something else, Antonio. That means more than you know," she cried. "I'm glad." His condition leaving him with no recollection of the past 6 months, Vanessa was left conflicted each day when confronted with a sentimental and attentive husband who looked at her like she hung the sun and the moon. This was not the same man who revealed himself to be the philanderer who'd begged her not to leave him when she discovered his infidelity, yet had still been with his mistress just days later on the night of his accident. This man watched her intently and always sought comfort in her nearness. On days when she cried silently over the demise of her marriage, he misinterpreted her tears as sorrow for his condition and did everything in his power to reassure her. Following the doctor's orders, Vanessa refrained from bringing up anything that might trigger or upset him, and instead let him believe that outside of his condition, everything was fine between them. Justin took great comfort in spending time with Vanessa, and even begged her to watch their wedding videos, look at old pictures, and even plan an intimate getaway for the two of them. Lulled by this version of Justin, Vanessa was helpless to resist falling once again for the man she'd married. Yet despite his sweet words and attempts to reassure her that her husband was still with her, Vanessa's unhealed heart kept screaming that Justin Pierce could not be trusted. Still, Justin 2.0 was proving himself to be everything she believed him to be when she first said, "I do." The tightrope walk between fiction and reality was still an uphill battle, however, and on the days when Vanessa felt especially laid bare, she'd found comfort in her meaningful conversations with Antonio. Now, Vanessa could admit that it wasn't fair to Antonio that she was so reliant on him when she didn't have much to offer him in return. But for as much as he wanted to pursue more with her, he always remained respectful and encouraged her to do what she believed was right. One evening, after she and Justin had spent all afternoon preparing dinner together, a task his doctor believed would not only help with his fine motor skills, but also allow the multisensory activity to stimulate the senses that might evoke his memories, Justin asked Vanessa about their short and long-term goals. Every day he'd been absorbing as much information about their lives as he could in an effort to recall something, anything over the past half year. We agreed that our trajectory would begin with careers, world travel, and then we'd settle down and start a family. Each word was a dagger to her heart, but Vanessa answered the question anyway, between sips of Merlot and a contrived expression. "Why are we only on the first third of our plan?" he asked with a curious gaze. Instead of answering, Vanessa redirected a different question to him. "We've been married for almost 6 years now. What is it that you foresee for us, Justin?" He stared at her for an agonizingly long moment before conveying his answer. "I'm genuinely looking forward to exploring the world with my wife and wanting babies with our stunning features and intellect. "What do you think you'll be like as a parent?" Vanessa asked, stirred by his initial response. "I'll be a master at midnight feedings, skilled at making mud pies in the yard, patient at teaching my son how to hit a baseball, precise at instructing my daughter on how to prepare the best Earl Grey for her tea parties, and intentional in showing my children that I love their mama unabashedly," he answered confidently. In a state of shock, disbelief, and dare she consider hope, Vanessa emitted a startled laugh at the self-assured response. "How does that sound?" he asked, as he leaned across the table toward her, his stare pinning her to her seat. "Admittedly unexpected," she replied with a shy smile and closed the remaining distance to meet his waiting lips. Their love-making that night was also unexpected, but still raw, passionate, and unrestrained. Every touch along her skin had been masterful, and each kiss served to reclaim her. Justin hadn't needed recent memories to command his wife's body. His touches were scorching, his ministrations unyielding. Their connection was a testament to what untainted love could and should be. Vanessa woke up the next morning deliciously sore, disheveled, and embarrassedly eager for round she'd lost count. As she got up to prepare their breakfast, she noticed that Justin's side of the bed was already vacant. Donning her robe, she made her way to the kitchen, where Justin was seated, 2 cups of coffee brewed and sitting on the table, his phone face down and his head in his hands. Not hearing her approach, when Vanessa touched his back gently, Justin startled and sat up. She'd been about to thank him for the coffee when she noticed his tear-filled, red-rimmed eyes. "Justin?" Vanessa questioned carefully. "We should talk," he said, his voice sounding low and gravelly. "Okay," she agreed softly as she took the seat across from him. Neither knowing what exactly to say, both Vanessa and Justin sat quietly, looking at one another. His expression was investigative and exploratory. Hers was optimistic but expectant. The previous night had made him hopeful not only for what they'd already accomplished, but for what was to come. It'd been just after their last languid lovemaking session into the early morning when the deep purple dawn peaked and his eyes drifted closed with exhaustion that it had happened. Flashes of tangled sheets, clinking glasses, blonde hair, and discreet touches assaulted his mind. He immediately shot up from his pillow, his body drenched with sweat. Try as he might, Justin failed to clearly identify what he saw, but knew with sinking certainty that whatever it was, it hadn't been a dream. Panicked and stricken, he rolled carefully from the bed to avoid waking his wife. His wife. Lumbering through the quiet house, Justin tried to find anything that would jog his memory. The photos, knickknacks, and society articles Dr. Nguyen had suggested that Vanessa lay out for him were all over the place. They all told a story about a beautiful and admirable couple, but he still felt disconnected. Justin then went to his study to try and find anything that would ignite a spark or jumpstart his broken psyche. Once there, he sat down in the comfortable leather chair and immediately began searching through his personal effects. Pulling out the top desk drawer, he discovered his phone tucked beneath a notepad. Vanessa had stored the phone and anything else related to his outside life away to avoid potential overstimulation or emotional declines. When Justin powered it on, it immediately began pinging and vibrating with messages. He knew he wasn't supposed to be answering any work-related calls or texts, but there were more and more increasingly urgent messages from Heather. What did she want? Vanessa's heart stuttered. She'd wanted to rage, to accuse, to throw insults. Instead, she remembered the doctor's guidance about giving him space to recall people and situations over time and to navigate through his own recollections. With bated breath, She maintained the decorum she'd always practiced and simply waited for his response. "Me," he said solemnly. Vanessa stared at Justin, her heart pounding in her chest. The room seemed to spin as she waited for him to continue. The coffee on the table sat untouched, the aroma wafting through the air, a stark contrast to the tension that filled the room. "What do you mean, you?" Vanessa asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. She knew the answer but needed to hear it from him. Justin looked at her, his eyes filled with confusion and sadness. "I don't know, Vanessa. I woke up this morning with a memory, I think." "A memory? Of what?" Vanessa nearly came out of her seat. "It was so vivid, so real. I was with someone else, not you." He paused, his voice trembling. "And then I found my phone. There were messages from Heather, a lot of messages." Vanessa's heart sank. She'd hoped, prayed even, that this moment would never come. But here it was, the truth staring her in the face. "And what do you remember about Heather?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Justin shook his head, his eyes welling up with tears. "I don't know, Vanessa. I just know that I was with her, and it felt wrong, like I was betraying you." He looked at her, his eyes pleading. "Vanessa, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. I don't know who I am anymore." Vanessa felt a lump forming in her throat. She wanted to scream, to cry, to run away. But she also wanted to comfort him, to hold him, to tell him everything would be okay. But how could she? How could she trust him again after what he had done? Vanessa's mind raced. She knew she had to tread carefully. "Justin, you've been through a lot. Your memory is still fragmented. Maybe it's best not to dwell on this right now." Justin's gaze sharpened, and he leaned forward. "Vanessa, I know something's not right. I can feel it. I see the way you look at me sometimes, like you're holding something back. And then there's Heather. Why is she messaging me like that?" Vanessa took a deep breath. "Justin, you need to focus on getting better. The doctor said your memory will come back in time. Let's not rush it." Justin's expression darkened. "I can't just ignore this, Vanessa. What are you hiding from me?" he pleaded. "I'm not. I feel like you are lying to me." "Damn it, Vanessa. Why won't you tell me the truth?" he shouted. Vanessa stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "The truth? You want the truth, Justin? Fine. You want to know why Heather is messaging you? Because you were with her on the night of your accident. Because you've been having an affair with her for only God knows how long." The words hung heavy in the air. Justin's tanned face paled, and he looked at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. "What are you talking about? That's not possible." Vanessa's voice trembled with a mix of rage and hurt. "It's true, Justin. I found the messages on your computer. I confronted you and you admitted it. You begged me to stay, but I couldn't. I left because I couldn't stand the thought of being with someone who could deceive me so cavalierly." Justin's eyes widened in shock. "You knew, and you still stayed with me?" Vanessa nodded. "The doctor said I needed to be here for you, to help you recover." "Is that all? Is that the only reason?" he whispered. "No. I stayed because I loved you, Justin. But I can't do this. I can't pretend everything is okay when it's not," she admitted. Justin reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "Vanessa, I don't remember any of it, but I remember loving you. I remember wanting to spend the rest of my life with you. Please, give me a chance to make this right." Vanessa's heart ached. but she stood her ground. "I know you don't remember, Justin, but it happened. And now you have to decide what you want to do. Do you want to try and rebuild what we had, or do you want to chase after Heather?" Justin's head dropped into his hands. "I don't know, Vanessa. How can I make a decision on something I can't remember?" Vanessa sat back down, her voice softening. "I know this is hard, Justin, but you need to think about what you want. And you need to be honest with yourself. Because I can't keep living like this, wondering if you're going to betray me again. I love you, Van. I want you. With all my heart I do," he expressed solemnly. "I know you believe you do." She smiled sadly and walked away from the table. Days turned into weeks as Vanessa struggled with her decision. She spent her days by Justin's side, playing the role of the devoted wife, but her nights were filled with doubt and uncertainty. She thought about Antonio, his kindness, his empathy, and the way he made her feel seen and heard. But she also thought about Justin, the man she had married, the man she had loved. It had been a sunny morning over breakfast when Justin turned to her. "Vanessa, I've been thinking about us, about our future." Vanessa looked at him, her heart pounding. "What about it?" Justin took a deep breath. "I want to try again. I want to be the husband you deserve. I want to be the father our children deserve. But I need to know if you're willing to give me that chance." Vanessa felt tears well up in her eyes. She wanted to say yes, to believe that they could start over, that they could build a better future together. But she also knew the pain and betrayal she had felt. Could she forgive him? Could her trust in him be restored? "Justin, I want to believe you. I want to trust you, but I'm scared. I'm scared of getting hurt. Again." Justin took her hand, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I understand, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove to you that I'm serious. I'm willing to go to counseling, to do whatever it takes to rebuild your trust." In the months that followed, Justin threw himself into his recovery, determined to regain his memory and rebuild his relationship with Vanessa. He attended therapy sessions, attended grueling appointments with his occupational therapist, and spent every spare moment with Vanessa, trying to recreate the love they once had. Vanessa, on the other hand, struggled with her own demons. She found herself torn between her love for Justin and her lingering doubts about his fidelity. She too began seeing a therapist, discussing with her counselor the shock of discovering that her marriage was a sham, while continuing to balance the duty of caring for this version of the man she still desired. Vanessa was also transparent about Antonio. She admitted that her thoughts often went back to his kindness and understanding during the time they'd gotten to know one another at the wellness resort, and how the way he showed up for her was in stark contrast to how she had to be the one to show up day in and day out. Ultimately, she knew she had to make a decision about her future trajectory, but she wasn't sure she was ready to let go of the life she had built with Justin. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. Vanessa and Justin went to counseling, worked on their communication, and rebuilt their trust. They talked about their future, about their dreams, about their hopes. They also talked about the pain points in their marriage. Vanessa asked him often if there was anything she could have done better, but he kept reassuring her that she was his everything. Then why did you cheat? Was the question that remained unspoken, but that always danced across her face. He couldn't answer, but offered her apologetic platitudes at every turn. They'd been sleeping contently one evening when Justin began writhing in bed. At first, it had been a muffled groan here and there, but as the episode progressed, he began speaking in full sentences and thrashing frantically. "Justin! Justin!" Vanessa turned on the bedside lamp and began shaking him. Springing up, he gasped for air and looked around the room with unseeing eyes. "It's okay. You're okay. I'm here," Vanessa cooed over and over until Justin settled down enough to acknowledge her presence. "Van," he whispered hoarsely.
"I'm right here, baby. Right here with you," she said confidently, although she'd been scared to death by what she'd just witnessed. "Van, I can't," he started sputtering again and kicking the covers off his body. "Shh, it's okay," she tried to soothe him. "No, it's not. I have to tell you something," he stated with urgency. Vanessa looked at him, her heart pounding. "What is it?" Justin took a deep breath. "I remember, Vanessa," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I remember everything." Vanessa's heart skipped a beat. She had known this moment was coming, had prepared herself for it. But now that it was here, she felt a surge of fear, a primal urge to run, to hide from the truth. "I remember the affair," Justin continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "I remember the lies, the deceit, the pain I caused you." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears, but she held his gaze, her expression unyielding. "And what do you remember about us, Justin?" she asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "What do you remember about the love we shared, the dreams we had, the life we built together?" Justin's eyes searched hers, and for a moment she saw a flicker of hope. But it was gone as quickly as it had come, replaced by a look of determination. "I remember it all, Vanessa," he said, his voice filled with resolve. "But I remember the man I was just before the accident, a man who doesn't deserve a woman like you," he admitted brokenly. "I'll call Dr. Noon," she said quietly. Vanessa spent the next few days in deep thought. She talked to Kedra, who'd listened patiently and offered her support. She also talked to Antonio, who encouraged her to trust herself, but to also never forget that she deserved happiness. The return of Justin's memory had brought a different kind of loneliness into Vanessa's life. Now having awareness of his actions and being forced to reconcile his deceitful behavior with the tender and aware husband he'd been for the past 6 months, had left Justin even more ashamed, contemplative, and distant. Out of confusion and regret, he'd begged Vanessa to hold off on making any decisions about them, and had moved from the primary suite and into one of their guest bedrooms to give her the space and solitude to think clearly. Thrilled with his progress, Dr. Nguyen had checked in on Justin almost daily. Still, she'd insisted that an additional 2 weeks supervision would be necessary before he'd ultimately be allowed to return to his independent activities and the previous normalcy of his life. Independent activities were how they'd ended up here. Vanessa laughed humorlessly as she sat quietly on the veranda in their back garden. Beneath the dusky sky and cool breeze, she sat for hours.
As the sun faded and the stars appeared, she thought about her life, about how she'd been raised to wear an S on her chest, about how she'd prided herself on being everything to everybody, about how her loyalty and dependability had been rewarded, not with reciprocity, but with expectation, about how aspiring to be more than enough had revealed that she was, in fact, not enough. She thought about Justin, her first lover, her partner, the man whose whispers had promised forever, the man she'd intended to grow old with. Then she thought about his betrayal, how his lies had devastated her, and about his sincerity and contrition over the past 6 months. She also thought about Antonio, about his unconditional kindness and his empathy, the man who not only reminded her that she had gifts, but that she herself was one. And just like that, she'd made her decision. Vanessa walked back into the house, her heart pounding. Justin was in his study, poring over printed documents and unread emails. It was clear that despite his doctor's urgings, he'd been trying to find his rhythm at work before his official return in a few weeks. He looked up as she entered, his eyes filled with hope. "Justin, can we talk?" Vanessa asked, her voice soft but steady. Justin stood, his eyes filled with anticipation. "Sure, what is it?" Vanessa took a deep breath and ripped off the bandage. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about us, about the future. I can't stay in this marriage, not after what happened." He just blinked. "I thought I could, but A sob broke free before she could finish. Justin's eyes filled with tears. He walked over to her, taking her into his arms. I understand, Vanessa." He squeezed her tightly as she cried, offering her the physical connection and support he only now realized she'd likely been craving this entire time. "I'm so sorry for the pain I caused you. I'm so sorry for the betrayal, for the hurt. I'm so sorry for everything." Vanessa looked up at him, her tears falling unchecked. "I love you, Justin, but I can't be with you. I can't be your wife. I can't be the mother of your children." Her words sliced through him like an actual blade, but he stood there and took it. He deserved to take it. His own tears finally fell, but his eyes were still filled with love. "I understand, Vanessa, and I respect your decision. I love you and just want you to be happy. After everything, I just want you to find the love and happiness you deserve." Vanessa held his watery gaze. "I will, Justin. I will." Vanessa's attorney had been efficient in a way that she hadn't had to think about how to divvy up their assets, property, and accounts, or request spousal support. Justin's disposition was also so acquiescent that he'd graciously met and exceeded the woman's precise demands on Vanessa's behalf. In the months that followed, Vanessa threw herself into her work, her friendships that had survived the shocking divorce, and her newfound passion for travel. She'd allocated all of her banked PTO toward exploring the world, meeting new people, and experiencing new cultures. Along the way, she also reconnected with Antonio, who'd remained in the background until her life had settled, but who had been a constant source of support and encouragement. One evening, as they sat on the beach in Bali, Antonio turned to Vanessa. "Vanessa, I have something to tell you." Vanessa looked at him, her heart pounding. "What is it?" Antonio took a deep breath. "I love you, Vanessa. I've loved you since the moment I saw you.
and I want to be with you exclusively. I want to date you, I want to protect you, and eventually, I want to marry you. Exclusive dating to marriage? That's quite the jump, Antonio. How can you be so sure after only a year? Vanessa asked incredulously. If your situation had been different at the time, I would have proposed after a week, he responded matter-of-factly, referencing the first time they'd met. Vanessa's eyes widened in shock. She had hoped, prayed even, that this moment would come eventually. But here it was, not one day, but right now, the evidence of who this man was staring her in the face. Antonio, I love you. I want to date you exclusively and eventually marry you too. Thank you for waiting for me, she said softly. Antonio smiled, his eyes filled with love. He took her hand, slipping a beautiful solitaire onto her finger. Many waters cannot quench love. Rivers cannot sweep it away. If one were to give all his wealth for love, it would be utterly scorned. He recited the endearing verse. Song of Songs 8? She sighed before grasping Antonio's face for a passionate kiss. The man was just built different. 18 months later, Vanessa and Antonio stood on the pristine grounds, surrounded by their family and friends. They had chosen to get married in the same place where they had first unknowingly fallen in love, where they had first shared their dreams and hopes for the future. As they exchanged their vows, Vanessa looked into Antonio's eyes, seeing the love and devotion that shone brightly within them. She knew she had found her happy ending, that she had found the love and happiness she deserved. And as they kissed, sealing their vows, Vanessa knew that she had found her healed, whole, happily ever after. It had taken considerable time, but Justin had ultimately come to terms with what he'd done, reflecting deeply on his actions, the pain he'd caused, and the consequences he'd earned. The day Vanessa had asked for a divorce, he'd been shocked. He'd broken down after hearing the words that had felt like a slap, apologizing profusely and promising to make things right. Vanessa had listened, but her expression and emotions had been a tumultuous mix of anger, sadness, and confusion. He'd offered confessions and made promises that he'd meant, but they'd all come too late. Even still, as she told him about the divorce preparations that were already underway, she promised to be there for him until he could stand on his own. Thinking about that exchange now, Justin still reeled at the loss of his amazing wife. The fact that she struggled in silence to balance her own needs alongside his recovery made him feel lower than low. When they'd said their final goodbyes to one another in her attorney's office, Justin had been devastated, finally comprehending the depths of his betrayal and the devastation it had caused. Yet, despite what he'd eventually remembered as having his cake and eating it too during his marriage, when he'd returned to work, he couldn't bring himself to revive things with Heather. Instead, he'd sought counseling, unpacked his selfish and destructive behavior, and did the work to become a man worthy of the title of faithful. In time, he found love again, with a woman who was patient and supported him even after he told her how he destroyed his sacred union. It had been at a charity gala where Justin had finally seen them. Residing in the same city, their circles often overlapped despite both having done their best to sever all ties. He'd heard the embellished stories and excitable rumors that his ex had remarried well, that she looked younger, that she was a traveling lady of leisure. Painful as it was to hear, especially from colleagues or associates who had gossiped and speculated mercilessly after the divorce, Justin hadn't begrudged Vanessa even an iota of happiness. After toiling with the exercise for months, he'd eventually taken his therapist's advice and penned a letter to her. It had been pages full of declared love, regret, contrition, and belated self-awareness.
Although he'd been vulnerable in a way that he'd never been in the 6 years they'd been married, his therapist had cautioned him not to expect a response. And it was good that he did, because one never came. That is, until one random fall day when he received a letter with no return address. Recognizing the crisp penmanship on the envelope, Justin nearly sprinted from his mailbox with the missive in hand. Dropping into the closest chair, he tore the envelope open.
Dear Justin, I've spent a long time learning to reframe the expectations I have of myself and those I have for others. So imagine my surprise at receiving correspondence from my ex-husband of all people. I imagine it couldn't have been easy to do, but I appreciate that you chose to be open, honest, and vulnerable with me. In that same spirit, I offer you a little vulnerability of my own. The idea of divorcing you and starting over was terrifying, but so too was the thought of staying in a relationship built on lies and deception. Still, I want you to know that I forgive you, not for your sake, but for mine. I've decided that I will not carry this hurt or this anger anymore. I need to move on and finally establish a happiness of my own making. Justin, I loved you deeply for the entirety of our 6 years together. I hope that in time, you will come to embody the depth of the love that was demonstrated to you. I hope you find the strength to rise to that standard and to let it guide how you love others and yourself. May you grow into that love and be the man deserving of it in return. Vanessa. Justin reached out, brushing his fingers over the dots that smeared her signature, only to realize that they were his own tears. As Vanessa and her husband danced among the other patrons, Justin watched from a distance. When she whispered something in the man's ear and he reverently laid his palms on her flat stomach in response, Justin's breath caught in his throat. Letting the moment of anguish briefly wash over him, Justin sighed before allowing a smile to adorn his face. In that moment, he realized that he was genuinely happy for Vanessa, happy that she was now living an answered prayer. Justin was also happy for himself, happy that despite the immeasurable loss he'd suffered at fumbling forever with his ex-wife, he'd learned the hard but valuable lesson and had put it into practice in order to find his own peace and redemption. And as the night wore on, the chandeliers above shining brightly down on them, Vanessa and Antonio knew that their love would be the forever kind. They were happily honoring one another and growing their family. They resolved to cherish, safeguard, and nurture that love with unwavering devotion for the rest of their days.